What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined for the second time on the Sheehan Show, I believe, by Rhys McKee, who fights this coming Saturday in Paris, as I like to call you, Rhys McKee in Paris. I'm like, that's perfect. Like the signs need to go out. Everything needs to go up for what you're calling your second UFC debut. The last time we spoke was just after the last Cage Warriors fight, and you were talking about getting back to the UFC, and it was a very stressful time and all that, even though it came after a great win. But how great is it to have those three letters alongside your name again and have the second debut right in front of you?
Yeah, especially, and as you said, we're right there now. It's this coming Saturday. It's been an amazing prep, coming off an amazing free fights, but definitely an amazing last performance. So it's nice to be here, and it's a relief, and it's a lot of stuff, but it's a happy time for sure.
I suppose, like everyone, when they start out their career, if they want to be an MMA fighter, and like you, someone who, from the amateur days, people talked about you as being someone who could go to the UFC, like to have, and I know obviously you've been there before, but like obviously it was very rushed in the way it went, coming in there against Chimaev. Maybe we can talk more about that in a second, but to be there again and now get to a place where you are at the stage of your career where you were the Cage Warrior champion and defended the belt, and like it feels like you're ready to kind of go on a run now. It must be great that all that hype is not the right word, but expectation, I suppose, has been kind of fulfilled by you and is about to be even fulfilled even more, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's funny, a lot of people feel like I would feel that expectation from external people, but I feel it more on myself, because like I know what I've been putting in here since I was 15 years of age. I've wanted it as much. So when everybody else fought it, I fought it even before them. So, it's nice, it's nice to be like on my own book, reach them expectations, but I still have a lot of work to do. As we know, I speak openly about how like it's not about just getting here, it's about what I'm about to do. But it is nice to make it back there again, and so much has changed since that first time, and it's just totally different. It doesn't even feel like the second debut, and I've realized that over the last few weeks, this is like, it feels like the first.
What was that phone call like, I suppose, that you got to say that you were back into the UFC? It must be so special to get that after, and especially after, it's happened once before, and you're like desperate for it to happen again. Was it Graham Boylan that rang you up, or what way did it happen?
Yeah, so I was just done training actually for the day, and we're having dinner, just having dinner, and the phone rang from Graham, and he wanted to have, it sounds a bit strange, he wanted to ring me with some gym equipment because he's kitting out of place, and so I said, if I can help you, I will. It's a bit late, and I was going to say maybe talk tomorrow, but anyway, I took it anyway, and you know what, there was no messing about in the call. It was within 50 seconds in the call, he said, right, I'm not going to waste your time. I just want to know you're free for Paris on September 2nd. And it was nice. It's the first call was emotional. This call was like very calculated. It's like, yeah, 100%, let's go, let's get it done. We had a nice moment where he's like, well done, you were patient, you done everything you need to. He said that how I followed the blueprint of what every fighter should kind of do if they want to get back to these things. And I obviously thanked him for I had no doubt I pestered him every week to get me back in. So I'm grateful for what he's done. He's grateful for what I've done. And it was smart business, I think, and then the end of it.
100%. That just on the Cage Warriors run, right? Because you look at it, and if people looking back now, say looking at the record here in Sherdog, and it's like 3 fights in Cage Warriors back after the UFC run, 2 years and back in. It's like to someone like me, or to someone looking at it, it's like, it wasn't too bad. You went in, you took your 3 fights, and it was, you got finishes in all of the fights, and you're back in. But for you, like for everyone but you, it's that. But for you, it must be so tough to listen to people like me talking on podcasts and go, maybe he needs one more win, or most people, and it's not just me, it's probably most people kind of saying that as well. That must be so frustrating, not just like for you wanting to be in the UFC, but for the amount of money you're taking in and everything like that as well. How tough is it to kind of be the person, I suppose, in the spotlight there when you just want to get to one place and you know that you're going to maybe have to go over and above what you want to get back there?
Yeah, it's funny, and I'm very I'm sure you maybe know this, I'm very engaged with what's out there. If I think there's people talking about my fights or something. I listen to the podcast, so I have a scope of what's going on in the scene. But like again, it's been a long bit of time, and on paper, when you look at Sherdog, it looks so simple. Well, he just had 3 fights and a 3 wins, but I had a year off. I had a really bad injury in the middle. But then, ever since that, I've been evolving and getting better. I have not had an easy week training since I've been cut from the UFC, and it's stood by me so much. It's like how many things I thought I was doing before the UFC compared to what I'm doing now. Like, it's just chalk and cheese. It's so different. But I think listening to the podcast, listening to interviews, people saying, oh, well, Rhys could maybe try this route or this route. You might not work out to the UFC again. I just had to know and use that as fuel to be like, I just can't wait or couldn't wait for the day that I could hear all these people talking about, no, he is back. And not in a negative way, because they were correct thoughts. I had family members that were saying to me, maybe look at different options and stuff like that. And I just had to be, the only person that needed to believe was me, my team, and my close circle. And that's the only people that I really cared about, really.
Was there ever any thought of going the other way? Because, like, in fairness now, it's not, the UFC isn't the only game in town anymore. Like, PFL are offering good contracts to people, especially someone like you who's obviously a very good fighter, and they're going into Europe even more now as well and investing heavily in Europe. Like, and I know, getting from Cage Warriors to those promotions to PFL and Bellator is tough, obviously, and with you being the champion as well, it adds just another issue onto that. But was there ever that thought that maybe look down the line, those options are there as well, or was it always the UFC?
Yeah, it was always the UFC. We were invited to those conversations, but we never entertained them, never opened them. And for me, it very quickly became like a ride or die thing. And I've been publicly in interviews saying since I was 16 that it's UFC or nothing, and I'll never fight for Bellator, I'll never fight for whatever. I think for me to go back on it now, looking back in years, I would probably have disappointed myself, just because I know that's what was right for me, and I suppose I'm proud that I stuck by my goal, but no, it was ride or die, and it was UFC or nothing for me, really, which some people may think is mad, but they don't have to worry about me.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good option to have, I suppose. If you have all those options, it's even better for you. We spoke briefly last time about that gap between the Justin Burlinson fight and the Jimmy Wallhead fight, and getting the mindset right for that Jimmy Wallhead fight, because anyone who watched that Burlinson fight was like, this is a fight of the year contender. How can this guy not be in the UFC after what he came through in that fight and the performance and the knockout and everything? And then to kind of have to turn around again. And I know it was a good few months. What was it, 10 months between those two fights? And you have to turn around again and do it. Like, how difficult was that to prepare for Jimmy Wallhead? And I know you've great respect for him, and you said it before and after the fight as well. But it felt like that Burlinson moment was a special moment, in Belfast as well, in front of that massive crowd, in front of everyone, and I suppose you had that moment again with Jimmy, which maybe made it easier, but that must have been a challenge for you mentally, I suppose, more than anything else.
I mean, to be honest, it wasn't really. I mean, I remember talking to Graham about who was going to be next, and it was probably going to be the winner of the Jimmy and Figlak thing, if that worked out. So, from the moment I knew that I was in contention with fighting one of them guys, I kind of accepted it. I wanted Jimmy to win because the last time I was in the UFC, I failed the veteran test, and the veteran test was Alex Morono, because Morono beat me with experience. He didn't beat me with skill, and he didn't beat me with anything else. He beat me with experience because he was a smarter fighter, and he knew what to do when I didn't. So Jimmy was that guy as well. Jimmy was that test. But I went out there and totally outsmarted Jimmy. I IQ'd him out whatever I wanted and outskilled him. So once I knew that I was going in there to prove that test, my mindset in the fight changed. It wasn't, I have to do this one more huge risk fight. And it was a huge risk fight. If Jimmy Wallhead was to knock me out the same way he done with Figlak, we would never be having this conversation about going back to the UFC, probably ever. And that, I think that's fine to say. To come back in a 2-fight win, then lose your third one, what do? Go back and get 3 more? We're now 2 more years down the line. So that was a huge fight, but I was in it for a lesson and in it to pass the test that I previously failed. So that fight has probably given me more confidence than any fight ever.
So what would you have done if you'd lost that Jimmy Wallhead fight? Would you have retired, or would you have tried to go some other route, or what would have been?
I don't know. Again, Sean, it was ride or die. It was was ride or die. So who knows? Like, I'm not saying I would have. I'm not saying I wouldn't have either. It would have been very hard conversations with my team because again, it was UFC or nothing. But here's the thing: if Jimmy Wallhead beat me at that stage of his career and this stage of my career, I didn't deserve to be UFC anyway. You know what I mean? And I've always been okay with that stuff. If I can back out the UFC and Mantakivi beat me straight away, I didn't deserve to be in the UFC anyway. So, I'm a believer of you are where you're meant to be. And listen, Jimmy didn't. So that's all we have to care about.
That's true. I just when you said it there, it makes me think of Paul Hughes because like it feels, I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like the UFC want Paul Hughes to have another fight before they sign him, sort of thing. And like anyone that watched the last fight or any of his recent fights, like you'd be an idiot if you thought he needed to prove anything else. But like for him, and let's say if that is the case, right? How do you like reckon that with yourself? Do you reckon it with yourself the way you did there? It's like, well, look, if I'm good enough to be in the UFC, I'm good enough to beat any of these guys in Cage Warriors. Let's just go out and do it and prove to everyone that like I am the guy. Would that be your kind of advice for him, or what way do you think for him would be the right way to go?
Yeah, we've spoken about it. Like, if it's not going to come now and you're going to have to fight, then you're going to beat someone anyway, you know. And people think, oh well, he'll be frustrated. He'll be frustrated, but if you're better skilled, better IQ, better prepared, all this good stuff, you'll beat them anyway. It doesn't matter how you're feeling frustration wise. So like it was the same for me. If I'm meant to be where I'm meant to be, then I'll beat these guys anyway. Exact same for Paul. So if Paul does fight for Cage Warriors again or whatever's next, that's where his mindset will be. Like, and he's an elite level fighter. Anybody who's at the top of these Cage Warriors promotions or the UFC are elite fighters, different mindset. They don't think like normal people in the nicest way possible, and that is why they can go and do these things. So Paul is the smartest head on the shoulders, and whatever is next, he'll go in there and take care of business.
I just started thinking of something there, right? Like the Cage Warriors Dublin card is coming up, and let's say Paul Hughes did fight in that, he could headline it and then go to the UFC. Are you the only one who's ever done that? I'm trying to think, like if you think about the other people who have headlined in the Tree Arena, like Ian Gary hasn't done it, Sean O'Bannon hasn't done it, obviously Kiefer Crosby just signed, hasn't done it. Connor didn't do it before he went to the UFC. I think you might be the only one to headline the Tree Arena. Maybe I'm forgetting someone there. Can you think of anyone?
I definitely think I don't know if I'm wrong here, but I've headlined Cork, Belfast and Dublin. So I've headlined three Irish shows. It's like, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if all this didn't work out how it's worked out, I would never have the opportunity to do that. Like, and sometimes when I think of this UFC Dublin card coming back, I feel like I've had my massive night in Dublin. Like, and I'm not saying that I don't want to be part of the Dublin card. That's not what I'm saying. But for me, it's like I feel like I've itched that itch, and what a special night Dublin was. And of course, if there's an Irish contingent coming back, then I want to be part of it. But like, I'm very lucky in my career to have had them 3 Irish headlines. It's unreal.
How much of a preparation was that as well for obviously the big show? Now you've had a couple of UFC fights before, but to be the headliner, and like I was a little bit surprised because obviously I hadn't been in the Cage Warriors card in a while apart from the Cork one, and obviously that was a smaller venue and everything like that. But the big fight feel that they had in the Tree Arena that night was massive, even with the light show and the music and all before. It was UFC-esque. It really was. That must have been a great preparation for you. Like, it felt like a UFC card. It felt like a big time fight. It must have been great to have that, I suppose, in your back pocket going into the next UFC run.
Yeah, I think if anybody who knows me in any way, close or far, you'll know that I love, big shows. I love big fights. I love the pressure, the headlines, the being ruled off, being the underdog. I love all that stuff. So you're right, it was absolutely ideal prep. Even them walking out from the back with the cameras and the blackouts and stuff like that. It's all perfect. Like, one thing about me as well, I've had tough fights and I've had big fights, and that is experience that is invaluable. Like, I'm going to go in and fight a lot of guys in the UFC that will never have as such big fight feels. So, that experience alone is something even good fighters don't always get if they don't have that big fight with stories.
Was that something that you felt was an issue going the first time into the UFC? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd never been to a UFC card before you fought in the UFC, wasn't that correct? Do you, like, looking back, was that a bit of a mistake, do you think?
No, not at all.
No?
I still haven't. I still wouldn't go to one until I was signed again. So, no, I don't. I think it's Yeah, it's just that I've always said it. I never tried the gloves on until they were my own. I never wore a UFC t-shirt until it was my own. It's just something that's how special I held it, and but now I've done that's tarnished a wee bit, and it's, whatever. Like, after this event, I'll go watch UFCs for sure. But no, I don't think that played a part. It's like, yeah, no, I don't think that played a part. It's just part of the story, isn't it?
Do you think that's like, obviously, that's kind of cool in one way, but in another way, is it like, I don't know, it doesn't harm the preparation much, but like mentally, like, because I feel like when I watch any of these documentaries with high level sports people, they're all about like the preparation, knowing exactly what time, where, and what you're doing, and be prepared. Even like if, let's say the soccer team is playing the Champions League coming up, they use the Champions League balls instead of the Premier League balls or whatever. For you to like never even have trained in the gloves or anything like that, like, was like that ever a bit of an issue, or you're just like, no, I'm not doing it, I refuse?
No, never an issue the first time. Like this camp, I've used UFC gloves every single session since I've been signed. The minute I get signed again, I brought the gloves out and started using them. And people say, even if you were in the stands, it might have felt a bit more. Listen, there's nothing like being a UFC athlete. Like standing in the crowd with a pint with your mates is nothing like what it's going to be like when you're under the tunnel walking out. The only best representation of what that would be is headlining Cage Warriors for a world title. That's what it's going to be like on a closer scale. But like in terms of like mindset and stuff, like I just can't wait. Like it's going to be unbelievable. Regardless of the first time, yes, it could have been a mistake if we look at it in hindsight. But right now, I'm mentally invincible.
Doing interviews with lads in the morning, your UFC debut as well, like probably wasn't the best idea, So, who'd do that to you, like asking you for an interview? It was my fault. I'll take responsibility for that. And also as well, myself and Graham McDonald felt like we were going to be involved in a fight the last time when you jumped into the crowd and you knocked Graham's laptop right off of the desk, and so you were nearly getting an invoice for no laptop there for old Graham. But sure, look, we'll take it again if you get the win the next time. But I would ask you about just like the Irish invasion before we get to the fight, because it feels like it's just kind of not come out of nowhere, because like I remember doing like a list about 6 months ago of like 6 people, and I think like 4 of them have nearly been signed since, and it must be so great for you to be a part of that. Like, and I was thinking there's 6 people 6 Irish people in the UFC at the moment, and from 5 different gyms as well, which is absolutely fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant. What does it feel like to be part? Like for yourself, it's great, but to be part of it for the whole country as well.
Yes, it's nice. It's refreshing. If anything, I suppose it's refreshing. Like it's nice to know that it was a bit scary at times, thinking we almost had our chance with all the first run, and to see it, it's not as refreshing for me. It's refreshing for the kids coming behind me. The young kid, the 14, 15, 16-year-olds that are in these lining these gyms every month, wishing that they'll get the opportunity someday. It shows that it's all possible. It's all happening again. So, and every one of the Irish that's in the UFC can and should and will be household names. It's not like there's no one on the list that I see being there for 2 fights and then bounced again. They're all good fighters, all tested fighters, and it should be a long run for a long time. And
2 of those people, well, possibly 2, will be in your division as well. Is there any chance down the line you might be up against one of them? I remember you were just standing chatting to Ian Gary below in Cork after you both had fought there, and I was eyeing the 2 of you up and like, oh, that'd be a fun fight. But I know Kiefer's obviously there now as well. Like we've UFC Dublin coming up. Would any of those big fights interest you, or are you happy enough to kind of stay away from the Irish lads?
I mean, listen, Ian's a man to chase at the minute, so if I was ever lucky enough to get in the position where I'm going to fight Ian, then it'd be fantastic. Who knows what Kiefer will do? Who knows what I will do? All I can do is take care of my success and keep putting people away. And, if there's gold on the line or it's for a ranking place, then I'll fight whoever's in front of me. But that being said, I think, a UFC Dublin card, they'll keep the Irish and they'll keep the separate. And I'm happy with that. But nobody's safe, huh?
That's true. That's interesting. Come here, let's talk about Ange Loosa, because look, I watched a few of his fights last night, and there's no doubt he's a very, very good fighter. moves a lot, throws a lot of shots right down through the middle, has a few good wins in the UFC as well. When you go and you watch him, what do you think of him? What's the thing that stands out to you about him as a fighter?
Yeah, I think he's a good fighter. He's durable. He's skillful. He's very explosive, very athletic. He poses a lot of problems. I like the fight a lot, to be honest. There's a lot of things I think in the fight that I'm going to do very well. There's a lot of dangers that he brings that I'll have to be on my game for. But we're talking a UFC level fight here, where nothing's a given. But this is a very, very winnable fight, and I know that the preparation and planning we have in place, that this should be a showcase.
When you're going to prepare for a guy like this and you're going to watch a bit of tape, I'm like, when I went to watch a bit of him last night, I looked at his record and saw, he's fought Munir Lazez, who is probably a similar height to you, a similar style in terms of a striker. So I go on and watch that and see how he did maybe in that fight. Is that the sort of thing you do as well, or do you go and watch every single fight and see every single style?
Yeah, you're smart and you're not silly, are you?
I don't know. You can ask a few people that question and they'll give you a different answer.
I think when you look at styles and stuff, it'd be stupid not to lean towards them. But I've watched every single one of his fights that I could get my hands on. Probably 5 times each, at least 5 times each. And my coaches have watched them more. But you lean on, you go for their last performance and you go for their best performance, and that's kind of where we look at, and pick up traits and stuff. And as well as that, we watch all mine back and see, what I've done, where I've went wrong. We picked that Jimmy that fight apart like it was the worst performance of my career, just to find everything we could in it. And I'm coming in here a totally different version of myself, which I think is going to throw a lot of people off.
When I look at Lousa, right, and I'm very interested to see how you look at and how you plan for this, right, and not to give anything away or anything, but to me, he's a guy who throws a lot of feints and a lot of shots. So he's either feinting or throwing almost at all times. How tough is it to know what's a feint and what's a shot? Just a simple enough question like that against a guy who's doing it all the time. If you don't react to one of them, you'll do nothing, and you could just be like a rabbit in the headlights. How tough is that to plan for that? And have you any just maybe an insight into how you actually work that out?
Yeah, it's regardless of Lousa, regardless of anybody, the plan is to be first and be heavier. Do you know what I mean? It's very hard to feint against someone when you're getting hit. It's very hard to hit someone when you're getting hit. And this has always been my style. I remember when I fought Jai Herbert. Jai Herbert's probably the best feinter that I ever fought, because I couldn't even open my eyes. He was feinting that much, and that was probably a bad example. But after that, then I worked it out. Pressure, hit them hard, hit them often. Normally handles the feinting question.
And I suppose we've watched a lot of the UFC recently, and we know what Dana White wants. He wants finishers, and if you look at your record, are a finisher and only a finisher nearly. What is it? Every fight that you've won has been a finish. You must be going in there and thinking, right, look, I get to finish here. I'm 50 grand is right there for me, and maybe another 50 grand if we go to Dublin again. That elixir, I suppose, of that bonus must be a massive thing for someone like you who, and when I say you're only a finisher, don't get me wrong, but you are a finisher. It must be so great for you to be well, I go in and I fight my own game. There's a massive bonus there for me.
Tell you what, if you were a betting man, you would vote Rhys McKee for a finish, and you'd probably vote him for fight of the night or knockout of the night, but just the way the fights always have panned out, and that's just if you're a betting man. So yeah, you're right. I come in with that style. I never hunt for finishes, but I'm just naturally go towards a finish. So I'm looking forward to seeing the odds for it.
Yeah, it should be fun. Last thing, Rhys, Caolan is fighting over there obviously as well with you, and we talked about Paul Hughes earlier, but the MMA in the North has just been unbelievable over the last few years, from Liam McCourt and James Gallagher and everyone else for ages. It must be brilliant to be on a card with Caolan, I suppose, travelling over there together and, representing Ireland like that. What does it mean for you, I suppose? It's for a long time it was a very Dublin-centric sport, I suppose, in Ireland, but now it's very much not anymore. It must be great for you to represent, I suppose, your place in the world and on the international stage. Yeah,
I believe there's going to be an iconic photo of me and Caolan after. I'm going to make sure that happens for us both, because it's a special night for us. It's a special night for the country. it's a special night for all the people that have been invested in us for all those years when nobody else cared about our fights and people carried them, and when people interviewed us after, like fights that nobody was really watching. Well, now we're here, we're in the big time, and it's going to be a special night, not just for us, but for the whole country and everyone. So to be the two guys flying the flag on September 2nd, you can trust that it means an immense amount to us both.
Well, I can't wait. And I know a lot of people are really looking forward to it, Rhys. Looking forward to the fight, and best of luck in the second UFC debut coming up in Paris.
Thank you, Sean.